Hi there, I'm Cary Ellis, author of 21st Century Superhuman. This is our 21st Century Superhuman show, and today we are going to discuss what is plasma energy and how can it be used practically in my life. And today I'm here with two of my really great friends, Vivic from Singapore, who is a tech support person with the Keshe Foundation, and JC, who many of you have been getting to know well, who is also tech support with the Keshe Foundation. And I really enjoy the conversations we have, you guys. So we've had some good ones. So it's great to be here with you both today. And we'll do this as a show so other people can get in on these insights that we get to have.
Happy to be here. Love exploring this stuff.
Thank you for having us.
Cool. So let's just start out with the fact that Mr. Keshe, Mehran Keshe, is a nuclear physicist, and he is bringing forth a new view of energy in our world. And thus far, and that energy is called plasma energy. And that's what we're going to get into discussing this morning or today. And morning for you, Vivek, right? It's night for me. Here we are in other parts of the world. So great that we can do this. And some of the old physics that we live in the world of is Newtonian physics. So we're going to take a look at what is this plasma energy and how does it work? So either one of you guys want to jump in for starters, and we're just going to have to begin at the beginning here, right?
Yeah. Okay, we can go to the definition of Mr. Keshe with relation to plasma energy. Remember what he says. Plasma energy is the mother of all creation.
That is
in that
beautiful.
definition.
Beautiful.
Yeah, in that definition itself, you get the whole broad spectrum of what plasma energy is. Everything comes from plasma. Everything is plasma.
And so, Vivek, would you say this is what we call the field in quantum physics?
Okay, plasma energy itself comes out of the interaction of two different types of fields. Actually, if you were to look at fields themselves, you have one field which is a contracting, a collapsing field. We call that the gravitational field. The other is the expanding field. We call that the magnetic field. Now let's look at the Earth. You have gravity, you have the magnetosphere. When these two are in good balance, you have the planet. So plasma itself comes out of the interaction of different fields. A field is what holds an atom together. Okay, it's what gives the atom its own definition of the proton, the neutron in the nucleus, and then the electron going around it. So we have to start and see. A lot of us are very, very much entrenched in the 3D world, the Newtonian world, where you touch yourself. Everything is it's got definition. It's of a matter state. But the way to approach plasma physics is to come at it from the other end. Looking at things from a matter state is a bottom-up approach. With Mr. Keshe, what he's doing is he's teaching us the top-down approach. From where it all originated, from the field interactions to plasma, to creation of the elements, to the creation of various matter states, and then it percolates down to solar systems, planets, etc. And that's where we come from. So the way to look at this is from a top-down approach, and to understand how plasma plays a part in our everyday life, and how we can manipulate plasma to serve us even better, to make our lives much more comfortable, much more livable.
Nice. Exciting. JC, you have some thoughts you want to jump in with there?
Just a little bit of expansion on that. Okay. And Vivek touched on the idea of the atom. The conventional Newtonian idea of an atom is a particle called a proton, a particle called a neutron, and another particle called an electron. And these particles have fields that interact with one another, and that's what holds the atom together. And one of the problems I had when I was doing chemistry in school was that you look at some of these atoms and you add things up, and it just doesn't seem to work. You've got two separate elements that are one proton apart. Now, if the fields were a balanced system in the Newtonian aspect of it, you add a proton, an electron has to leave, because the fields will not be in balance anymore. It'll be positively biased. That way, the electron, or rather, electron would have to come in rather than leave. So you would still have to have a balanced system there, which doesn't exist in the periodic table in all elements, which threw me for a loop. And clearly, I don't understand their thinking behind it. But it's a question that came up, and it said there's got to be something else here. Now, when you look at it from the top-down approach, from the plasmatic approach, you're not looking at particles. You're looking at purely fields. Within a field structure, you can have a strong gravitational field, which is a collapsing side, which we would normally consider to be, in the matter state, the positive side of the circuit, because that's where everything is going to. Okay. You would also have the expansion side, or the negative side, which is where it radiates. This is where the energy comes from in an electronic model. To get a balance between those is going to be a position between the two, because you'll have a strong field which is going to dissipate over distance, and there's going to be a point where that other side of that equation, the other side of that field, is going to find a position where it likes to be, and it's going to stay there. Same reason why the planet is, why it's this distance from the sun, why our moon is this distance from the planet. That's a balance point within the mixture of fields, the amalgam of fields that make up each body. If you look at the atom as nothing but fields, no particle, then a lot of these issues that come up simply go away. You don't have the problem with these imbalances, because you're looking at it from a field balance perspective, not a put a marble in one side, one has to leave perspective.
And all I can say is wow, because it really is a whole new way of kind of perceiving this reality, and it actually is. It matches right up with quantum physics, because quantum physics says that the atom is only a potential until our attention gets placed upon it, and then it comes into form. And I end up teaching this all the time, and I think somehow that correlates with this about plasma physics, or would we call it plasma physics, plasma energy?
Plasma physics.
Yeah, and it really is part of this new quantum world that we're just really in the baby stages of getting to understand. Even those of us who talk about it every day, we're learning every day. And
yep. and it does correlate. When we're dealing with the plasma physics, everything is just fields. Fields have there's nothing to perceive there. This is one of the issues. One issue that I'm having dealing with some of the experiments that I'm doing is I'm trying to come up with a way to visualize these fields. And at this time, I'm not having a whole lot of success doing it. We've been able to do it by taking a health pen over a cup of water and freezing the cup and getting a representation of that field flow, which is awesome. I mean, that's an excellent way to do it, but it's really slow, doesn't last very long. I'd like to find some way where I can have a dynamic system where I can see the interaction, I can see the flow, the movement of these fields, and that would go a long ways to help. But what you were saying about the atom not in quantum physics is the atom doesn't exist until you observe it, which is yes and no. It's kind of the right way. It depends on how you look at it, what perspective you're taking on this. And this is what this is all about, is all about perspective and perception. And the atom does exist. The fields are there. There is no place in what we perceive as space where there is no fields. Okay, these maggrav fields exist everywhere. We have no way of perceiving those maggrav fields until they interact in such a way that they trigger one of our senses. either our eyes, our nose, our taste. And,
Wow.
and it's what we're perceiving with, well, it came out in the Matrix movie. You know, what is reality? If reality is what you perceive with your senses, then your reality is nothing more than electrical impulses being sent to your brain. Anybody who has a cat, the cat, you watch that cat for any length of time, you will know that cat sees things you can't.
Mm-hmm.
His tools that he's using, the receivers for these interacting fields that he's using to perceive his world, act on different types of these field interactions. And he can perceive different events within those field interactions that we simply don't have access to. But it comes down to when fields interact, it doesn't necessarily have to be two fields, it can be a million fields all at once, all interacting in a certain way. You're going to have what we've come to call a Coulomb barrier, which is it's also akin to the event horizon of a black hole.
Wow.
It's that boundary layer between the inner and the outer of that system, right? And there is a definitive boundary layer there. In the newer physics, even Newtonian physics, we're calling it the electron shell or the electron cloud. It's the same thing. That's the Coulomb barrier, the boundary layer of these systems. When you have interaction of several different fields, you have a very unique boundary layer. And it's going to have very unique properties. Some of those properties we're going to be able to pick up with our senses. And we perceive it as paint, as a car, as a blade of grass. But it's still, when you boil right down into it, it's still nothing but a mixture of these fields.
Wow. It's just amazing. And I know it's almost over my head just listening to you explain this. So I'm sure there's going to be people out in our listening audience who are even going to be groping a little bit more. I know, Vivek, you had some really neat ways of looking at this that kind of gave some examples. Can you bring this a little bit more into focus for us
Sure.
in a step that we might be able to get?
Okay, one of the easiest ways, at least for me, to think about fields and the interaction of fields and the condensation of fields into the matter state is to think of the holodeck on the Starship Enterprise. You see, when the door opens, there's nothing in there. It's just a room. But when you turn on the computer and you tell the computer to give you a certain setting, that setting appears. How does that happen? It's the condensation of energy into the matter state within the Coulomb barrier, which is the holodeck itself.
Yep, layer upon layer upon layer.
Yeah. I mean, think about what Mr. Keshe mentioned in one of his earliest teachings. Let's go back to the example of an atom. We have been taught to think of atoms as particles. But now we understand that these are all, plasmatic fields. So if you were to open up the plasma that we call the electron, you'd get kilowatts, for example. If you were to open up the plasma that is the neutron, you get megawatts. Just one atom. You get kilowatts and megawatts from there. It depends on what you need. So rather than looking at everything from a 3D perspective, look at it from the top down. Look at it as energy that condenses and condenses and condenses and condenses until it becomes matter state.
Yeah, if you've got a system of plasma that's very open, again we're kind of dealing with some really esoteric concepts here, in that in plasma energy, distance doesn't exist, time doesn't exist, all of this stuff. But as a bridge, let's look at it this way. If you have a single atom of hydrogen in a cubic meter of void, okay, I don't want to say vacuum, I want to say void. That single atom of hydrogen, the fields of that hydrogen atom which we perceive as a minuscule little tiny submicroscopic particle, is going to expand to fill that cubic meter of void. At which point we no longer perceive that atom of hydrogen, because it's not the compact structure with a very defined Coulomb barrier at a certain, how would you describe it, frequency level, perceptive range that we field strength that we can pick up with our perception devices. When you expand that out, you're changing the parameters of that Coulomb barrier, and we don't perceive it as the same thing anymore. We see this very clearly when we nanocoat copper. When we perceive the hard little ball of copper, the typical atomic structure of elemental copper, we see it as a shiny kind of a reddy orange metal, right? I've got copper right here. Now, what we're seeing on the surface of that is a lattice structure of these very compact field interactions, which create a very specific Coulomb barrier that we're perceiving as this orange metal. When we nanocoat the structure, what we're doing is we're taking that individual atomic field interaction of each, what we call atoms of that structure, and we're puffing them up. We're loosening the hold on that, which is changing the parameters of that Coulomb barrier, creating a different perception of what we're seeing. And then we see it as a black coating. And part of the reason why we see it as a black coating, because of the tools that we're using to view this, is it's no longer radiating a certain type of energy that we perceive as this color, as this shininess. It's actually absorbing a lot of energy, and it's not radiating as much anymore. So we see it as black. We see it as, I've made nanocoating. It's the neatest thing in the world. I wish I could show it on camera, but it does not show up. I hold the material up and I look at it, and it looks like a hole in reality, because there's virtually nothing coming out, radiating out of that system that my perceptive tools can pick up on.
That's the nano-coated copper that looks that way?
If you do it, I haven't figured out exactly why or how to do it, how to repeat it, but I've had one or two instances where my nanocoating is such that it looks like a hole. It looks like I'm holding onto a hole in reality, because it's not radiating any energy. And
to just say, the way that we nanocoat copper, for if anyone's listening who doesn't know, basically we're putting that copper into a bath of caustic or lye with boiling water, which then expands the molecules or the atoms, as you're saying, JC.
Yeah. In a little more detail, we're placing the perceptive Coulomb barrier of the copper into a condition where it no longer wants to be a hard, solid little compact ball. It wants to expand into the conditions that we're creating, and we create that with caustic soda, with sodium hydroxide and water. And
so I've always really liked that. It's helped me so much since the beginning of you just telling me that one little thing. It's like the atomic structure, it's like almost popcorn, like it's opening up. And so let's relate this. How does this relate to the plasma field, or how does this relate to us being able to access plasma energy, and how would we compare it to the old electrical current running through a wire?
When you have the matter state atomic structure, the hard little balls, and they're packed really tight, well, relatively tight. In reality, when you really look at it, you've got a ball here and you got another one down the street. But they are in relation to the plasma fields, in relation to the bigger picture. It's a very hard, solid structure. And between the two balls, if you got two balls of say copper, and they're relatively close together, the energy between those two balls is going to be very, very strong. And it's not going to allow adjustment within that plasmatic field that's between those two, because it's a very solid, very tight, strong field. Imagine two magnets really close together. Okay, you're not going to be able to put anything, any magnetic attractive material between those two very easily. When you pop this popcorn, when you make these atomic structures, the Coulomb barrier of that tight little ball, when you loosen it up, you're lessening the fields, and you're expanding the distance between each of these barrier fields, so that what's between them is very soft, very gentle energy. And the fields between those can flow, can adjust, can change very, very easily, because they're not being held really, really, really strong. This has the effect of the spaces between those puffed up atoms makes a beautiful environment that this plasmatic energy, this field flow interaction between the magnetic and the gravitational, very easy, and there's very little resistance to it, so it wants to be in there, and it draws that energy in from its environment, and it collects it within that structure. And this is why we nanocoat the material, is to create this very, very easy to deal with, very easy, very soft energy, where the external interactions of all of these fields can interact, it can move, it can adjust, it can find its own positions very, very easily within this layer that we're creating on the material. Does that help at all?
It does. And Vivek, I'd love for you to jump in. What I'd like to say right here is the thing that's so amazing is Mr. Keshe, as a nuclear physicist, as he started figuring these things out, and someone said, well, why don't you patent this? And he said, well, let's patent it to all of humanity, and let's start teaching it through open source so everybody can start learning. And that kind of, he came up with these simple tools and methods that we could work with right at home in our little garage, or shop or whatever. And, by winding even just copper on our finger and putting it through these baths, we can begin accessing this plasma state. And it's really wonderful that we're getting to kind of delve into this science in a way that bridges between our old system and the new systems that are coming. And maybe that could intro you, Vivek, to sharing with us a little bit of how does the old electricity run through the copper wire, and then how do we relate the plasma fields to what we're moving into in relationship to that?
Okay, with plasma physics, perhaps we should start at a slightly different angle, something that's easier for most people to understand. Let's talk about food. Okay, so we eat food in order to give ourselves some energy, in order to operate and do the things that we normally do. Let's look at the digestive process. You eat food, it goes into your stomach, and it gets converted into a GAN state in the stomach itself. And then from the GAN state, it gets converted into a nano state.
So Vivek, explain to us, why is that a GAN state? And okay. Again, GANs means gas in its nano state. So
nano state. Because the thing is, in order to be able to access the energy of matter, that matter needs to be in a plasma energetic state. It cannot be in the pure matter state. Again, think of the popcorn.
Wow.
Think of the popcorn. That's exactly what's happening within our bodies. And our bodies are in the plasmatic state itself. So food goes in, it gets broken down into the GANs, into the nano state, and from there, energy gets absorbed by the various parts of our body. Think about, instead of having to go through that process of going from matter state to GAN state to nano state to release the energy, to absorb the energy, what if you could feed your body the energy it requires straight away without having to go through that process? So this is where plasma physics comes in. And this is where things like, if you were to look at the health pen. So what you are doing is you are creating a conduit for plasma energy to flow from the surroundings through you into someone else.
And so
And
just for those who don't know, Vivek, just hold that health pen up and just explain what is in there. There's
okay,
one or two copper coils. Beautiful.
this is what's inside there. It's 2 copper coils with a central pin that runs straight up and down through it. So this becomes a conduit for plasma energy to flow through.
And it is black
and
because it's been nano-coated, right?
it's been nano-coated. That's why it's already in the plasma, the plasmatic state. It is a superconductor for plasma energy. So now what we're doing is with this health pen, we are allowing energy, plasma energy to flow into the body and go exactly where it needs to go. And this is why, many people who have made their own health pens or have bought health pens from the Keshe Foundation have found that they are able to take care of pain. Pain relief becomes very, very easy for them. So rather than going from bottom up, that is eating food, okay, you go from the matter state to the GAN state to the nano state and release energy. Why don't you just deliver energy directly to where it's needed? And that's where plasma physics comes into play in our lives in a day-to-day basis.
And we actually have people experimenting with that as far as food goes as well. Using a plasma tool to potentially replace even the need to eat food, even though eating food is fun in our old version of the world, right?
Yes, people are experimenting with this right now. If you were to look at the MAGRAV system itself, the feeding system is quite similar to the MAGRAV system, but with some subtle differences. We're not going to get into the differences here, but the operating principles, the basic operating principles are the same. Create a conduit for plasma energy to flow through, create a field interaction in the structure that you create, and stand right in the center of the structure. You get all the energy that you need.
Beautiful. So let's go down the path of how do we relate to this with our current systems of electricity running through copper wires or gasoline going into or diesel going into a motor to run a car. How do we make transition to that?
Let's draw a parallel between us eating food and us burning gasoline in a car. It's pretty much the same process. You convert matter state into an energy state, but that requires a lot of energy in itself. On the other hand, if you adopt a top-down approach and you come from the plasma energetic level to a matter state level, that process itself takes very little energy in order for it to happen. Now, when we are looking at it in terms of how are we going to use this in a car, we need to remember that plasma energy adopts itself to exactly what you need at the point of need. So if you were to introduce plasma energy into the engine of a car, that plasma energy is going to induce a rotation in the crankshaft itself. So by inducing this rotation in the crankshaft, you would need less fuel to have that rotation in the crankshaft. By having less fuel, you get better mileage. You get better fuel economy. And you burn less fuel, you throw out less pollutants into the atmosphere, and everyone's happy.
And then how about the electrical wires that electricity runs through in the house, say?
Well, it's very similar. It's a very similar process. We're using this electrical pressure to create fields in an electric motor or a field in a transistor. And then we're converting that field into a usable work of some description. With plasma energy, if we think about the magnetic gravitational interactions, we know from are just basic, everybody, just about every kid has ever played with magnets. They know that they can use the fields of those magnets to create motion. Okay, they're going to want to position themselves, either if they're like fields, it's going to push it away. If it's opposite fields, they're going to pull them together. The MagGrav system is very, very similar to that. We can use the MagGrav fields as direct motion producers. We don't have to convert it to anything. Just like it's the same energy that makes the planet spin. The planet spins because of a certain type of interaction in MagGrav fields. If we can create the similar sort of an interaction in the wheel of a car, the wheel of the car is going to want to spin just like the planet spins. We don't need motors. We don't need fuel. We don't need any of this stuff. We just have to get that balance in the MagGrav field interactions correct to create that rotational motion. With electricity, again, we're always dealing with fields with electricity, unless you're dealing with heat. If you're using an electrical system to generate heat, you're dealing with friction. Slightly different process, but I'm going to concentrate on the field interaction of the electricity for now. A transistor, when you apply an electrical current to a transistor, you're creating a magnetic field, which is an inductive energy within the transistor, which either closes or opens this little valve, which is the transistor. With the magnetic gravitational energy, we can do the same thing, but we're not limited to the little teeny tiny sliver of energy that electricity is. If we're doing it with a MagGrav system, we're accessing a massive quantity of energy. If anybody has looked at the electromagnetic spectrum, the old 3D electromagnetic spectrum, it goes from DC to gamma rays, and we've got this little tiny sliver in the center that we actually perceive. Plasma energy is exactly the same, except for it goes from DC to infinity, and we're only perceiving this little teeny tiny sliver. So we've got all of this energy that's on either side of what we can actually pick up on to work with. And that can be motion, it can be odors, it can be light, it can be anything. Because everything that we know of, everything that we can perceive is an interaction in these magnetic gravitational fields of some description, whether it's electricity, motion, thought, light, matter. It's all the same stuff. We're just learning now how to get these fields to interact in a certain way to create the result that we're looking for, which is very exciting.
That is very exciting. It's really fantastic. And just you guys explaining this, I mean, I know that some people will get pieces of it and other people will get other pieces of it. It's just we're all kind of in this learning curve of being able to adapt into our thinking. So I just encourage everyone, just take the bits and pieces that you can get and keep playing with those in your mind and keep experimenting, keep learning, keep understanding, and keep deepening your experience of it. Because, none of us just got this instantly. We've been adding the pieces and watching, listening to each other, learning from each other. I'll never forget the first time I heard Mr. Keshe talking on one of the Knowledge Seekers workshops, talking about how to, somebody had come up with, well, this is how you put a MagGrav unit in a car. And Mr. Keshe said, well, before you show us the picture of how you put the MagGrav unit in the car, first of all, take out the motor and the transmission and then put the MagGrav unit in the car, and the plasma field will just make it go. And I remember that was one of those like seminal moments for me where I just went, wow, we are moving into something that's just so far beyond the comprehension of how we've been looking at this reality. And
if you have a MagGrav system where you can adjust the fields of an area, it doesn't have to be a big area, it can be just like an 8-foot bubble that you can stand in. If you can make those fields so that they are compatible with the beach on Jamaica, you will be at the beach on Jamaica.
Wow.
Because it has to be there. It's just like two magnets. If you adjust the field of one magnet so that it interacts with the field of another magnet, they will either push themselves apart or come together. It has to happen. There's no way around it. The only reason why you can put two magnets on a table and they don't move is because of friction on the table.
Right.
Interaction with the fields of the table holds them in place. If you take that away, put them in space, they could be 20 million miles apart. They're still going to come together eventually.
You know, I do this all the time now when I'm driving my car. I just say to myself, okay, because the truth is we're using all these tools to pull in the plasma field or to pull in our relationship to it, an expanded relationship to it. But the truth is eventually we will move to doing it with consciousness or doing it with our mind. And even that is so big to understand. But now whenever I'm driving a distance, I just say to myself, okay, I now see myself like pulling into the driveway at the place where I'm going. And you know, my trips seem like they go like that, like just like it's almost like the trip doesn't even exist. And then suddenly there I am at the place I'm going to. So I think there's different ways we can play with this.
Yeah, we've got one tool that I know of for sure that is beginning to teach us that very concept is the health pen. And what people who use the health pen a lot, who work with it on a daily basis, they use it on other people, it doesn't take very long before they realize they don't need the tool anymore.
Right.
Finger. They can do it just by concentrating, by bringing the energy, because your thoughts are plasma as well. They're interactions of fields of a certain strength, certain type. I still think of it as frequency, but that's because it's easy for me to see it and to reconcile some of these as frequency. But they are creating the condition, the plasmatic magnetic gravitational condition of the outcome that they want in the area that they're in, and they no longer need the tool. Which is, and I think all of this, all of these devices that we're building, the health wall, the pain cup, or the food cup.
What's the health wall?
This is a maggrav reactor
with the crisscrossed coils, and then
yes, the 90-degree coils in an array on two layers.
Right.
One is magnetically biased, so it emits energy. The other is gravitationally biased, so it draws energy in, and you just stand in this flowing energy field, and it's a very broadband plasma type energy. It's got all, it's a very wide field.
I'm excited to make one of those. And I saw somebody had a dog with tumors. It was like an 11-year-old dog, and they put it on a mat in between two of those walls, and in 5 days the tumors were gone.
Yeah.
So
because the body doesn't want tumors. For some reason, the conditions were created where those tumors could exist within that magnetic structure, or the maggrav structure that is your body. When you add this broadband energy, you can balance that system out. It's no longer the structure of that body, the maggrav plasma energy structure of that body is no longer conducive to that energy of the tumor, so the tumors cannot be there, and they just simply leave.
Right.
Another way to think about it is if you were to look at tumors, cancers, viruses, etc., they are packets of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple, they are packets of energy. And like what John mentioned just now, a certain condition occurred such that these excess packets of energy were allowed to develop within the body itself. So all you need to do is create a condition which allows these excess packets of energy to be drained. And when you drain these excess packets of energy, the body comes back into balance, disease is gone. Now, if you were to take that excess packet of energy that we call a virus, and you were to extract energy from it in a certain way, that virus could then become food.
Well, extract or add energy to it, depending on where.
It's basically amino acids.
Yeah, exactly. So you see, there's nothing really. If you were to look at it from a very, very broad perspective, nothing is really harmful. It's only the interaction between two dissimilar fields that determines whether it is harmful or not. So even if something is harmful, you could manipulate it in such a way that it becomes useful.
So well said, you guys. I mean, I really appreciate, and I know you guys and even myself, we're talking about these things kind of on a daily basis. So we're learning how to express them in new ways. And I just love it. Really, really great stuff. I think maybe unless if either one of you feels like you'd like to add something, I think just because we're talking about some pretty big concepts for the mind to begin to grasp, maybe we'll keep this relatively short, and then we'll do a part 2 one of these days when we feel like it.
Yep.
Anything else?
On that note, I would like to suggest I've been teaching people esoteric things for a very long time, and I started out with law. And one of the weirdest things about law is you need to learn how to speak a new language because it's not English, or at least it's not written in the language that you're used to. It's written in law, and it took a long time for people to understand this. And what I suggested, and I've used this for a very long time, is that whenever you learn a new thing, you're not going to get it right off the bat. It's going to be really confusing. There's going to be a lot of information that just doesn't, there's no pigeonhole, there's no slot you can put that information in. So simply absorb information as data for the first little while. Make the database of information. When that database reaches a certain size, things will make sense to you.
Very good.
The other thing that I would like to add is that given the manipulated reality that we're living in, most of us have not been taught how to think. And that's
this is an insult. Please, folks, understand this is not an insult. This is a common thing. It was a created system.
It's a conditioning.
Exactly. And it's nobody's fault, really. I don't blame anybody for not being able to do this. But please understand that the vast majority of people out there, they don't know how to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And I for one would be the first person to put my hand up and say 5 years ago I didn't know how to think.
Yeah.
I didn't. I was simply going along with the flow. I thought that I had to put myself through school, get myself into university, get myself a degree, get out into the working world, get a good job, a stable job, and rise up the ranks and yada yada yada, because everyone else is doing that. And that's the conditioning that most of us, if not all of us, have been born into. So the appeal goes out that now that you know that this is the manipulated reality that we are living in, please sit down and learn to think by and for yourself without any external influence. Okay? It has to resonate within you.
Yes.
If you're doing something and it dissonates within you, it just doesn't feel good, why are you doing it? On the other hand, if it resonates within you, it makes you feel joyous, it makes you feel wonderful, and it makes you want to jump out of your chair and say, I want to do this even more. Why aren't you doing it even more? None of us has a monopoly on truth. So if this has been meddled with, where can you turn to learn how to think by and for yourself? Here. Right here. This has to lead this. I'm not saying be emotional. I'm saying listen to the little voice within your heart of hearts, because that is your intuition. That is what's going to guide you, because what's right for you may not be right for someone else. So you need to listen to your own intuition. Go with what resonates within you, understand what's going on in the world, and then make your decisions based on that. This is how you think. And once you start doing this process even more and more, then it is even easier for people to start thinking from the top down, from field interactions into the matter state. It becomes second nature.
Yes. Well said, Obi-Wan.
The circle is complete.
Yes, it is. Wonderful. The movie The Matrix, I think, is really true. There's another Matrix coming out soon, I heard. So here we are. We are learning to think. We are becoming 21st century superhumans. We're learning to listen to our hearts. to our spirits. And really entering into this kind of new technology takes some of that listening, paying attention, and starting to harmonize with the truth of who we really are, rather than just conforming to a system that is broken in a lot of ways. Plasma technology is definitely on the brink of carrying us beyond the use of fossil fuels, beyond having to burn coal. And as these things happen, we're going to go into a huge new level of economic freedom on the planet. So we are in revolutionary times, folks. This is a new world being born. And what's beautiful about this, you don't have to be spiritual. It's scientific. And we're watching people cross every country border around the world, participating in this, taking part, learning together. Am I frozen? It says it's unstable. Hopefully we're still on, but it's...
We're still recording. There we go.
This is crossing all country borders around the world. And Mr. Keshe's highest aim is that governments will lay down their weapons and we will begin to develop a world based in peace, abundance, and well-being for all humankind, all creatures, and Mother Gaia.
Yeah, to support that, what you just mentioned, especially about the economic structure, if my information is correct, the OASIS system, which is basically a little box that gives you your food, a place to live, all of the energy that you require for your devices, pretty much covers all of your basic needs. Don't quote me on this. I may have expanded on this a little more than it should be, but that's what I understand the system to be. It is right now in pre-production.
Awesome. That is fantastic. And really what we're learning at home, we have the ability to develop all these parts that you're talking about that they're now producing in one box. So
all of this stuff, all of these devices, they are simple enough that children can make them.
Yes. And I think that's an important reminder. And, you know, I've got GANs making out in the garage here where I live. And, you know, I'm going to be making coils the next few days and nanocoating them and making my own devices. I'm really excited to have one of those healing walls. And and I want to put a unit on my car. So, you know, anybody can play with this. I'm not Little Miss Super Scientist at all. I have to kind of, you know, go through the steps and learn from the videos that I've made, you know, and that other people are making. And
I remember just 6 or 7 months ago when you were in Florida, walking you through the process, going, don't worry about understanding it. Do it this way. You will get it.
That's right.
You're getting it.
If I may just quickly jump in the GANs kits that you have right now at home where you're making GANs, have you noticed a thin, oily film at the top of the container itself, the liquid in the container?
Some, but I haven't. I need to go look. I just started these about a week ago. You know, I have a jar, though, with copper GANs in it that I made a while back. I wanted to ask you guys about it. It has a little yellow blob in it that looks like kind of a little, I don't know what. I want to show it to you guys and ask you what it is. So,
I'd like you to take a look at the GANs container once we're done with the show. If you were to see that little thin layer of oiliness on the top of the salt solution,
right?
Now I want you to think about it. That's how oil is formed. So the term fossil fuels is a misnomer. You know, the crude oil didn't come about because of the death of millions of dinosaurs.
Interesting.
And the term peak oil is a deception, because we were supposed to have hit peak oil, but guess what? They just found another huge bunch of oil fields somewhere else, and that can supply the planet's oil needs for the next 50 to 100 years. Where is all this oil coming from?
So you're saying it's really kind of a product of the plasma reaction of just the life of the planet.
Exactly.
And, I mean, sure, let's burn oil, but if it's polluting, then let's burn something out. Let's do something else that's non-polluting, right?
Well, if you look at it from the plasmatic standpoint, when we take this energy out of the earth in the form of oil, we run it through a process, we convert it into something different. We convert it into, well, what most people would consider waste gases and constituent components.
Yep.
Then we're releasing that into an environment where it didn't exist in the first place. We're altering that plasmatic field, the energetic signature of that new environment,
right,
into a system where what used to support life very, very well, now we have a condition that doesn't support life very, very well.
It's destructive to life.
It was not destructive. This is the thing.
Okay.
We're not destroying anything.
Okay.
All we're doing is we're changing the conditions so that life doesn't like being there.
Well, we're talking about fossil fuel use right now, right?
Well, burning. Trees. When we're burning trees, when we have a wood fire.
Right.
This is something that normally happens within the environment where the biosphere is.
Right.
So burning trees isn't creating the conditions where we don't want to be there. Now, a big cloud of smoke rolling through your town, yeah, you can't breathe, and it's eventually goes away, but it doesn't persist.
So
that environment can handle that change in energy.
So
and
how
it's actually
using plasma energy is different than that? Or
using the plasma energy, we're going to be working with the energies that are already here. All we're doing is concentrating what's already there into a form that we can use for another purpose.
So there's no wastage in that process.
So we don't
Exactly.
have to go dig a hole in the ground and pull the stuff out and put it through a refinery and then put it through a motor and burn it. Instead, we're just pulling the plasma energy out of the magnetic gravitational interaction fields and
using it for a purpose that already is here. We already have food on the planet. We already have motion on the planet. We already have energy available here in the biosphere where we exist. That the conditions which allow this body to be.
That's why Mr. Keshe always says,
oil is. If I was to take this body and go where the oil is, this body cannot be there. It cannot. The energies are not compatible, and it will fail. If we bring the oil to where the bodies are, again, the energies are not compatible, and the system has to fail.
That's why Mr. Keshe always says the burning has to stop. Because think about it. It takes a lot of energy to pull the oil out of the earth, to refine it into petroleum, to diesel, to whatever else that it's being refined to. And then it takes even more energy in the combustion process in a car or in a truck. And these engines are only, 30, 35, 40% at the absolute outside efficient.
Right.
And there's a lot of waste products that are coming out. Not that they are necessarily destructive, but they can be. You know,
but we're expending energy to get fuel. We're expending energy in order to get fuel. And plasma is much more efficient.
Yeah, to go from matter to plasma is energy intensive. Requires a tremendous amount of energy that you have to put into that matter state system to open it up on down through the process to create the plasma. When you're going from a plasma to a matter or to an energy or to a motion system, it takes very, very little.
Right.
Because the plasma is already a nice loose field. It's easy to manipulate. And all it takes is you interact two of the specific types of fields. At that interaction point, you have the conditions you want.
Right.
Think about it this way. Going against the grain of the flow versus going with the flow. Okay,
Exactly.
You're in a canoe. You're on a river. You are paddling against the current. You are expending a hell of a lot of energy, but you will get to the destination that you want, provided you do not faint in the meantime. On the other hand, if you were to go with the flow of the river, you find that you expend very, very little energy, and you're just coasting down the river. You're enjoying yourself. You're taking in the scenery. You're breathing in fresh air. It's a very enjoyable experience. Same thing. When you're moving from an energetic state to a matter state, that's going with the flow. But when you're moving from a matter state to the energetic state, that's going against the flow of nature. All we're going to do with plasma physics is we are mimicking nature. We're going with the flow of nature, and we're doing what nature already does.
That is awesome. I mean, that's brilliant. Why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we want to do that? It's
Yeah.
just the bridge from the known to the unknown, from the familiar to that which is not familiar yet, which we have to become acquainted with. Just a nice representation of it. All right, you guys, thank you so much. This was awesome, super cool. Many blessings to anybody who's still with us, and listen to your hearts. Get involved in this new energy and play with it. Find ways to participate. Watch videos, practice, and we shall see you soon.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Much love. Adios.